Think your gym routine is tough? You wouldn't last a single day training like a Viking. Modern fitness has made us soft, and what Vikings did daily would have you crying for your protein shake and air-conditioned gym faster than you can say CrossFit. Let's talk about what Viking training actually looked like. The stuff that would send you running back to your Peloton bike and meal prep containers. First off, forget everything you've seen in movies about Vikings just being naturally buff warriors. These people earned every ounce of muscle through brutal daily training that makes modern boot camps look like yoga for babies. Vikings didn't have gym memberships. They had survival, and survival was the most demanding personal trainer imaginable. Here's the thing. Vikings didn't separate workout time from regular life. Every single activity was a full-body workout that would destroy the average modern person. Rowing was the foundation of Viking fitness, and I'm not talking about that rowing machine at Planet Fitness where you can check your phone between sets. Viking longships required constant rowing for hours, sometimes days at a time. Each oar weighed about 30 to 40 pounds, and you'd be pulling it through water resistance for 8 to 12 hours straight. Archaeologists studying Viking ship replicas found that rowers burned approximately 5,000 to 6,000 calories per day just from rowing. Modern Olympic rowers train for about 2 hours daily. Vikings rowed all day, every day, during raiding season. The rowing motion Vikings used was nothing like the smooth gliding you see in modern rowing. They stood while rowing, using their entire body weight to drive the oar through rough North Atlantic waters. Your legs, back, shoulders, arms, and core were engaged constantly. One study of recreated Viking voyages found that crews lost an average of 15 to 20 pounds during a single month-long journey, despite eating constantly. Viking rowing technique required you to brace your feet against the ship's ribs, drive upward with your legs while pulling the oar, then reset for the next stroke, all while maintaining balance on a rocking ship. Modern rowing machines have a nice, stable platform and adjustable resistance settings. Viking ships had freezing ocean spray, storms, and the knowledge that if you stopped rowing, you might drift into enemy territory or rocks. But rowing was just the cardio portion of the Viking workout. Let's talk about the strength training that would make your modern gym bro weep into his pre-workout supplement. Vikings didn't have dumbbells or barbells. They had boulders, logs, and each other. Stone lifting was a common test of strength and a regular training method. In Iceland, there are still lifting stones called steintök that were used to prove a man's strength. These weren't light. The entry-level stone, to be considered minimally strong, weighed about 50 kilograms or 110 pounds. To be considered fully strong, you needed to lift a stone weighing 155 kilograms, that's 341 pounds, onto a ledge at waist height. The legendary Húsafell stone in Iceland weighs 418 pounds and was used by Vikings to prove exceptional strength. Modern strongman competitors train specifically for months to lift this stone. Vikings used it as a casual test of whether you were fit for hard labor. Your gym's personal best on bench press means nothing if you can't lift an awkwardly shaped boulder onto a fence post. Log carrying was another fundamental Viking training method. Trees needed to be felled, stripped, and carried to build ships, homes, and fortifications. A typical Viking longship required about 30 to 40 oak trees. Each trunk could weigh 500 to 1,000 pounds and needed to be carried from the forest to the shipyard. Vikings didn't have trucks or forklifts. They had their backs and their friends' backs. The farmer's walk that modern strongmen do in competitions where they carry heavy weights for distance was literally just Vikings bringing supplies from one place to another. Except instead of a nice straight path with a defined distance, Vikings carried loads across rough terrain, through snow, over hills, and through mud. Your gym's turf strip for sled pushes is maybe 30 feet. Vikings carried supplies for miles. Wrestling was the primary combat sport and training method for Vikings. But this wasn't the WWE entertainment you're thinking of. This was Glima, a brutal Scandinavian wrestling style that had few rules and ended when someone couldn't continue. Archaeological evidence from Viking burials shows numerous broken bones that healed, suggesting people survived brutal training sessions and fights throughout their lives. Glima training started in childhood and continued throughout a warrior's life. Matches could last hours as opponents grappled for advantageous positions. Unlike modern wrestling with weight classes, padded mats, and referees stopping dangerous situations, Viking wrestling happened on rocky ground, beaches, or packed earth, between opponents of any size, and continued until someone submitted or was incapacitated. The casualty rate during training was high enough that sagas regularly mention warriors being injured or killed during practice bouts. Now we get to the part that separates Viking fitness from any modern program. Weapons training that could literally kill you if you messed up. Axework was fundamental to Viking life and combat. Every Viking owned an axe, using it daily for chopping wood, building, and fighting. A typical Danish axe had a blade weighing 2 to 4 pounds on a handle 3 to 4 feet long. Vikings would practice axe drills for hours, swinging, chopping, and striking in controlled patterns. Your arms, shoulders, back, and core would be screaming after 10 minutes. Vikings trained for hours daily. Here's what makes this terrifying. Vikings practiced these drills with real sharpened weapons. Training accidents were common and frequently fatal. Sagas describe numerous instances of warriors being accidentally killed during practice when a training partner's axe slipped or a demonstration went wrong. Modern martial arts training uses padded weapons and protective gear. Vikings used actual battle axes that could split a skull with one missed swing. Studies of sword fighting show that even trained modern practitioners can only maintain effective technique for about 30 seconds of full-intensity combat before fatigue sets in. Vikings needed to fight for minutes or even hours during raids and battles. They built this endurance through relentless daily practice that left hands blistered, arms exhausted, and bodies covered in bruises from practice hits. Spear training was perhaps the most common weapons practice since spears were the primary weapon for most Vikings. A fighting spear was 6 to 8 feet long and required constant practice to develop the timing, accuracy, and strength to use effectively. Vikings practiced throwing spears at targets from various distances, building the shoulder strength and technique to hurl a 4-pound spear accurately up to 30 yards. But the real workout came from spear sparring, where warriors would engage in mock combat using practice spears. Even with blunted tips, these sessions were brutal, full-contact affairs where getting hit meant serious bruises or broken bones. The constant movement, striking, dodging, and blocking provided a full-body workout that combined cardio, strength, and functional combat training. Shield work deserves its own section because modern people have no concept of how exhausting holding a shield in combat is. A typical Viking round shield was about 3 feet in diameter and weighed 10 to 15 pounds. Doesn't sound too bad until you realize you're holding it extended away from your body, absorbing impacts and moving it constantly to block attacks for extended periods. Historical combat reconstructions show that holding a shield in proper defensive position causes complete arm failure in untrained people within 5 to 10 minutes. Vikings needed to maintain shield walls for hours during battles, with shields constantly being struck by axes, swords, and spears. The shoulder, arm, and core strength required is beyond what any modern gym routine develops. Farming in the Viking Age was back-breaking labor that makes modern agriculture look leisurely. Ploughing fields meant walking behind a wooden plough pulled by oxen, guiding and pushing the plough through rocky Scandinavian soil for 8 to 10 hours daily during planting season. The upper body strength required to control a plough, combined with the leg endurance from walking miles daily, built functional strength that no gym replicates. Harvesting crops with hand scythes worked every muscle in your body. The repetitive swinging motion, bending, gathering, and bundling of grain went on from sunrise to sunset during harvest season. Viking farmers could swing a scythe for 12 hours straight. Modern CrossFit enthusiasts struggle to complete a 20-minute AMRAP without needing a rest day. Blacksmithing was another common skill that doubled as a brutal workout. Swinging a hammer repeatedly to forge iron requires tremendous grip strength, shoulder endurance, and core stability. A blacksmith's hammer weighs 2 to 4 pounds, and you're swinging it hundreds or thousands of times per day. Each strike needs enough force to actually shape red-hot metal. Archaeological studies of Viking blacksmith burials show significantly enlarged arm and shoulder bones on the dominant side, along with spinal changes from the constant twisting motion of hammering. Their bodies literally reshaped from the daily workload. Your gym might give you some muscle soreness. Viking smithing gave you a permanently altered skeleton. Fishing and hunting provided food, but also serious physical conditioning. Pulling fishing nets from small boats in the North Atlantic required teams of men hauling hand over hand on heavy, wet ropes for hours. A single fishing net could weigh several hundred pounds when full of fish and waterlogged. Vikings didn't have winches or mechanical advantage, just raw pulling power. Hunting in Scandinavian terrain meant tracking prey through snow, over mountains, and through dense forests, while carrying weapons, supplies, and eventually carrying the kill back to the settlement. A fully grown elk, which Vikings hunted regularly, can weigh 700 to 1,000 pounds. After killing one, Vikings had to butcher it and carry the meat back, sometimes for miles through rough terrain. Your gym's stair climber with a weighted vest is a joke compared to carrying 100 pounds of elk meat up a mountain. Now you might think, okay, I'll just eat more to fuel this intense activity. But Viking nutrition would be another shock to your modern system. Vikings didn't have protein powders, pre-workout supplements, or carefully calculated macros. The Viking diet was heavy on fish, game meat, barley, oats, and whatever vegetables could grow in the harsh northern climate. Protein came primarily from fish, which was eaten at almost every meal, and whatever animals could be hunted or raised. But the quality and preparation methods were nothing like today. Most meat and fish were preserved through drying, salting, or smoking, because fresh food spoiled quickly. This meant tough, chewy, incredibly salty protein that would make modern bodybuilders cry. Your perfectly grilled chicken breast with exact macro counts wasn't an option. Vikings ate dried cod so hard you had to soak it for days before it was chewable, or smoked mutton preserved with enough salt to give you hypertension just from looking at it. Carbohydrates came from barley and oat porridge, flatbread, and whatever root vegetables survived storage. This was complex carbs in their most basic form. No pasta, no rice, no convenient quick cooking grains, just dense, heavy bread and thick porridge that sat in your stomach like a rock. Here's a fun fact. Vikings consumed an enormous amount of calories daily, with active warriors and laborers eating 4,000 to 6,000 calories per day, sometimes more during heavy activity periods. But those calories came from an incredibly limited variety of foods eaten in quantities that would overwhelm modern stomachs. Imagine eating 3 pounds of dried fish and a massive bowl of plain barley porridge for dinner every single night for your entire life. Hydration came primarily from water, milk, or weak ale. The sports drinks and carefully formulated electrolyte replacements you rely on didn't exist. Vikings working in the summer heat drank water from streams or wells, and ale that was brewed primarily to provide safe drinking liquid rather than to get drunk. The alcohol content was low, about 2 to 3%, but you'd be drinking it throughout the day during physical labor. The timing of meals wasn't the optimized pre-workout, post-workout, and recovery meal schedule modern athletes follow. Vikings typically ate 2 main meals, one in the morning after several hours of work, and one in the evening after the day's labor was complete. Your body's glycogen stores would be running on empty for hours during intense physical activity. Supplements were non-existent. No creatine for strength, no BCAAs for recovery, no multivitamins to fill nutritional gaps. Vikings got their nutrition from whole foods, or they suffered deficiencies. Archaeological evidence shows many Vikings had nutritional deficiency markers in their bones, yet still performed incredible physical feats. The physical training is only half the battle. The mental aspect of Viking training would break most modern people before the physical demands did. Vikings were raised from childhood with an expectation of toughness that makes modern mental toughness programs look like gentle encouragement. Pain tolerance was built from early childhood. Boys began training seriously around age 7 or 8, starting with tasks that would be considered dangerous for children today. They were expected to endure discomfort, cold, hunger, and pain without complaint. Showing weakness or complaining about hardship brought shame to yourself and your family. Sleep deprivation was common during raiding seasons and long voyages. Vikings couldn't just anchor and sleep through the night. Crews needed to maintain watches, manage the ship, and stay alert for dangers. Historical recreations of Viking voyages found that crew members averaged 4 to 6 hours of broken sleep per night during active sailing, for weeks at a time, while still performing intense physical labor daily. Fear management was trained into Vikings from youth. By the time a Viking warrior was 20 years old, he'd likely witnessed multiple deaths, participated in deadly combat, and faced life-threatening situations numerous times. Vikings were expected to absorb terrible experiences and continue functioning at peak capacity. The psychological toll of this was real. Sagas describe warriors who went berserk or had what we'd now recognize as PTSD symptoms, but there was no therapy or recovery time available. Here's what would actually happen if you, yes, you reading this, tried to live and train like a Viking for just 24 hours. Hour 1. You wake at dawn after sleeping on a wooden platform with a thin mattress of straw. Your back already hurts and you're cold because the fire died during the night. Hour 2. After a breakfast of fish and porridge that makes you gag, you head to rowing practice. Within 30 minutes, your hands are blistering, your back is screaming, and you're sure you're about to die. Hour 4. You're begging for a break, but there are still 6 hours of rowing left. Your shoulders have given out, you're pulling the oar with arms that feel like rubber, and several people have yelled at you for having terrible form. Hour 6. Rowing practice finally ends. You've barely gotten feeling back in your arms when it's time for weapons training. The practice axe feels impossibly heavy. Hour 8. Weapons training has left you with new bruises on top of yesterday's bruises that you didn't actually get but would have. Your forearms are so fatigued you can barely hold a cup, let alone a shield. Hour 10. Time for daily labor. Today you're helping build a new section of wall, which means carrying stones that weigh 50 to 100 pounds from the quarry site. On your first carry, you drop the stone on your foot. On the second, you simply can't lift it. Hour 12. Midday meal is the same as breakfast. You're too exhausted to eat much despite having burned thousands of calories. You've never been this tired in your entire life. Hour 14. Back to work carrying stones. Everyone else seems fine. You're moving in slow motion and getting mocked for being weak. Hour 16. Evening weapons practice. You're so exhausted you can't even hold the practice sword properly. A training partner casually disarms you 3 times in a row, then looks disappointed at how easy it was. Hour 18. Evening meal. More fish and porridge. You'd literally commit crimes for pizza and a sports drink. Hour 20. You collapse on your straw mattress, every muscle screaming, hands covered in burst blisters, sunburned, dehydrated, despite drinking constantly. and facing the knowledge that tomorrow will be exactly the same. Hour 24. You haven't actually slept because your body hurts too much. You're not used to sleeping on straw, and you had to get up twice to use the bucket that serves as a bathroom. Dawn breaks, and it's time to do it all over again. Most modern people would tap out within the first 4 hours of rowing. Even elite athletes would struggle to complete a full Viking day without serious modifications and rest breaks. So the next time you think your leg day was brutal or your CrossFit WOD was intense, remember you did it by choice for an hour in comfortable conditions with the option to stop whenever you wanted. Vikings trained like this every single day because the alternative was death, either in battle, from starvation, or from being cast out as too weak to contribute to the community. The past wasn't better or more noble. It was just harder, brutal, unforgiving, and constantly testing the limits of human endurance. Your modern workout is hard enough. Be grateful you don't have to train like a Viking to survive.